We are going to begin this lecture talking about Mesolithic Europe. This is the Middle Stone Age, and this time frame is highly variable throughout Europe. It ends when an area or a group of people in an area adopt farming as their primary subsistence strategy. So I'm not going to give you any specific dates here. Just keep in mind it's at the end of the Pleistocene. So that Pleistocene-Holocene transition is around 10,000 years ago. What we see happening during this time frame is that we have some very dramatic environmental changes going on. So we have rapidly fluctuating temperatures. We have what's called the isostatic rising of land. And what happened was that the actual land mass rose up as the glacial ice retreated. So there was just literally so much ice and heavy ice on Europe that as it started to retreat, the land started to rise itself. So we see post-glacial beaches that are 250 meters above modern sea level in Scandinavia, which is actually, we actually still see isostatic rising of land in Scandinavia today. And then we see the eustatic rising of sea level because of melting ice. So you have these two things going on that's creating a lot of environmental change in Europe during the Mesolithic period. We have huge tracts of land that are being reclaimed by vegetation, so we see forests starting to reemerge. We see other tracts of land being flooded by rising sea levels. So the Denmark-Scandinavia land bridge goes away because of rising sea levels. Great Britain becomes separate from the continent. We also see quite a bit of silting in lakes because of increasing organic sediments, again being released by the glaciers. So we also see kind of a change in the animal population during this time frame, where several become extinct, like the mammoth and the woolly rhinoceros and the giant deer. And then through that process we see a focus on new mammals for subsistence, like the red deer and the roe deer, the hare, the wild pig, elk, aurochs, although aurochs become extinct soon after. The defining characteristic of Mesolithic Europe are microliths, and these are just really small little stone tools. It might have been like larger tools that broke at some point and they reworked them so that they could use them again. We do see these first appear in the Upper Paleolithic period, but it doesn't really start to show up in abundance until the Mesolithic, where it does seem like microliths are used quite a bit. We see a lot of new tools show up, like hoes. We see mattocks, which is a digging tool. We see arrows, and we see traps for like fish and so forth. So you can see in the toolkit a change in the focus for their subsistence strategy. We see quite a variety in dwellings now. We see windbreaks all the way to very large structures, and one of the sites that kind of best demonstrates all these changes going on in the Mesolithic is a site called Lipinski Vir, which is in the Danube River Valley, dating from 7750 to 6250 BP, or before present. We see trapezoidal structures here ranging anywhere from 5 to 30 meters large. They're on terraces that overlook the Danube, so out of the floodplains. We see within these structures limestone hearths, plastered floors, which tells us that people were staying there for a longer period of time because they were putting quite a bit of energy into constructing their habitations. And we also start to see some interesting new kind of art motifs show up. As you can see in this picture in this particular slide, we see a carved human fish kind of figurine. So this is an indication to archaeologists that there's an importance of fish within the economy. Again, so some changes from the Upper Paleolithic into the Mesolithic Europe. During this time frame, we also see rapid population growth, and we start to see some variability in group size, and it depends on the environment. So we often see large residential groups from anywhere from about 25 to 100 individuals estimated in those populations. We see evidence of periodic visiting between groups, And then we'll see larger aggregations where people will come together. So large social networks are being established during this Mesolithic period. They're probably meeting to exchange information, exchange goods, and also to find marriage partners. It's also during the Mesolithic where we see the first cemeteries appear in Europe. So by 7500 BP, we have actual formal cemeteries. Now there is some variation in the cemeteries and also variation in how people are buried, but we're going to look at one site in particular, Vesalivia, site number 3, dated to about 7,500 years ago, or BP. And we see a number of paleopathologies, or ancient diseases, and also traumas on the skeletal remains that have been found. Now, some people have suggested that these cemeteries are actually territory marking, and it could be. These are our ancestors, this is our land kind of thing going on, but again, that's a hypothesis. But to get back to these paleopathologies, we see arthritis, and we see dental caries, or we see cavities is the other word for caries, and we see something called enamel hypoplasia. And enamel hypoplasia is an indication of malnutrition because we see some deficiencies in the formation of tooth enamel. We also see some abnormal thickening and growth of bone due to anemia. This can be caused by iron deficiencies. It could also be parasites. And this particular situation is referred to as parodic hyperostosis, or holes in the skull. We see rickets caused by vitamin D deficiency in children. We see osteomalacia, which is the adult form of rickets. That's actually more prevalent in women than in men. And we see quite a bit of injury, so a lot of projectile points embedded in bones, suggesting to archaeologists that there's increased warfare. We also see some support for that in cave paintings in Spain. As I mentioned, there's quite a bit of variation in the burial. We see extended cremations, we see people in fetal position, we see people sitting up, we see people lying on their stomach, so quite a bit of variation. We also start to see, interestingly enough, some dogs appear in burials, and sometimes they're just burials of dogs. So at Skateholm in Sweden, we find a number of these burials of dogs, and they're actually treated the same way as people. So some possible explanations for this are that dogs were important for hunting, or they were put in burials to accompany their masters into the afterlife. So a couple of possible explanations. Another kind of important site for the Mesolithic is Starkar, which is in England, dated from 10,770 to 10,460 BP. And there's really great preservation at this site, so it's a really good example of Mesolithic life. They've found over 17,000 flint artifacts, including, again, the microliths, also spear points, barbed points. We find a lot of scrapers, and they also find rolled birch bark, which suggests that they were actually working hides, cleaning and tanning them. We find antler spear points, a lot of antler or different kinds of animal bones, deer, elk, ox, pig, fox, badger, rabbit, duck, cranes. I mean, those are just a few of the animal bones that have been found there. But interestingly enough, they have not found any fish bones or plant remains. So that suggests that the Starkar folks were primarily hunting, but not fishing, and not really too concerned about plants, although it is possible that those two things just didn't preserve well. So it does indicate that, though, the subsistence was primarily hunting. We also found kind of an interesting thing. You can see in the one picture here of a bone headdress or frontlet. This one is particularly made out of red deer bone. So some people have suggested that there were elaborate hunting rituals being performed here at Starkar. So those are just a few kind of examples of Mesolithic Europe. And we'll move on to Neolithic Europe now. So Neolithic Europe, again, whenever a group adopted farming as its primary subsistence strategy, that kicks them into the Neolithic or the New Stone Age. So throughout Europe, that runs anywhere from like 9,000 BP in Greece to 3,700 BP in the more northern regions.